Hi, I'm following along with Paul McWhorter's Raspberry Pi lessons. We're on number 32. Still working with the keypad. And this lesson, the homework was to gather your keystrokes into like a code and then print that code out. Um, and he also said that we should put it in a function. So that's how what I was going to work on. So I got my Raspberry Pi and I'm VNCing into it. This is the original code from last week. I had actually put my original code into a function, but this function here was just returning a either a key press or an empty string if no keys were pressed. And then the while true was doing the checking to see if um, the button was held down or if there was no key press at all, and it was doing that checking in the while true loop, which seemed fine. A function, I've always felt that a function should just do one thing, and our one thing that my function was doing was just checking the keypad and returning what it saw at that instant, and that's what I was doing. Um, Another thing is a lot of people were after a key press. One of the ways that they were thinking about uh, so you don't get multiple key presses recorded when you hold down your key was to put it in a while loop until you let off the key. That's called blocking code, and generally that's not a good idea in programming because you want to be able to do something else while you're doing that. The one way it was explained to me is that it would be like if you are a cook in the kitchen and the instruction said to put 4 quarts of water in a pot and put it on the stove and wait for it to boil, and that would be that you thought that that meant that you couldn't do anything else around the kitchen. You couldn't peel your carrots, you couldn't chop your celery, you couldn't do anything until that water boiled. So they said that's not how you do it in the kitchen. So that's not how you should do it in programming. So that's just my 2 cents on that. And I try to avoid blocking code whenever I can. If anybody coming from the Arduino side, very first thing you learn in Arduino is the delay, and when you do the Blink project, and that's a blocking code, and then you have to. Then after you, I taught some students that in Arduino, and I do the same thing, and then you spend the next month trying to get them out of that bad habit of blocking with delays in their code. Like if you're running a robot or something like that, you don't want delays in it, or you're not going to have a very responsive robot. So anyhow, that's what. So like I said, this one all we were doing was getting the keystrokes. This is the original one from last week. One other thing I wanted to point out, Paul showed us that for his keys or whatever, he mixed them up, which is fine in Python, of characters and new numbers, integer numbers in there. But um, when you're trying to string together a code, you need all these to be strings. Um, if you were doing a different program, or maybe you were doing needing them to be numbers like temperature alarms or something like that, then you might want to think about a different way of doing it. But um, I just felt that for this project it was better to put them all in strings. So let's get to the one that we did this week. It wasn't a whole lot different from this one, just add a dozen lines of code to it so that we can accumulate our code as we go. So here I've turned them all into character strings there for the keys in the list. Um, so and then add we had the last key before, and we add this key string so we can keep track of a string. So we got that going on. Everything else down here is all the same. And here's the function now. Like you say, it's grown quite a bit, but actually our code down here in the while true is a little bit less. So we're doing that. And again, this code, what it's going to do is, let's go back here to the while true. It's going to check it each time through the while true loop, and it says go to that function and find out if you got a keystroke, and it's going to just look for a keystroke or nothing. It's going to return a keystroke or nothing, and then it's going to accumulate it in this section of the code. I'll work through that in a second, but again, it's non-blocking. We could do whatever. Once we get a code entry, we could go down here, and if it was like a lock or something that you were going to unlock, or temperature that you wanted to put into a alarm, you could go ahead and do all that down here because you got the code. So like I said, this pretty much is about the same. The only thing is we need to use global variables for this last key and this key string. If you come from Arduino as well, you might think, oh, you could use a static variable there, but Python actually doesn't have static variables. So every time through this loop, if you don't have a global variable here, like this entry string, it's going to disappear. Whatever value you end up at when you go out of it, it's going to disappear. So you can use local variables, but they are local and only use one time. You can't save them for the next time around. So you either have to do global, or the funny thing is in Python, any lists are actually by nature global. It's kind of funny that you don't have to declare them as global, and they're just available to any function or whatever you have there. So anyhow, so we're doing the same thing here, getting our keystroke or empty string, and we're checking it. And what we're doing here, like I said, we're looking for our D key, because Paul said, well, that would be like your enter key or your enter key. So if it's not the D key, all we're doing is accumulating them in this key string. So we're saying plus equals. So we're adding a character to the end of our string, and we're printing them out in the code down here. You'll see our string grows each time we press a regular key. You could just comment that out if you wanted to have a blind entry. I think that Paul might have used a blind entry on that, but I kind of like to see which key I'm pressing, make sure it's pressed and everything. These keypads are nice, but they're not mounted on anything, and sometimes you don't know whether you press the key or not. So but then if you do, so we got an else statement here. So this says if it's not D, so this means if it is D, what we're going to do is we just take the key string and make it equal to this entry string, and then the key string gets cleared. So a little bit of extra variable there, but you need to be able to clear this key string, and you couldn't return the key string if it was empty. So we had to rename it with another name. And then we still have, and like I say, we're still keeping track of our last key press. And then we're returning the the entry string. So all we're doing is we're looking for, this is going to return either the entry string starts out as an empty string. So it's either going to return an empty string or it's going to return your code without the D on it. We're not including the D in our key string. So we got, all we're doing is checking if it's empty now. And if it's not empty, then we're printing you entered and then this code. And then, like I said, you could do whatever you wanted with it there. So that's enough talk. Let's get it running. All right, so we're running. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see this or not, but let's see, 7, and then we're gonna add a 4, and then a 1, and you can see 741, and then a hashtag star. That's enough, and then we'll hit the D key to enter that, and that will break it out of that code, and it says you entered 741A, whatever that is. And then when you enter the next key, because it cleared our key string, we're going to start out and we can say 8, 5, 2. Well, I must have bounced on that 5. So if this was a blind thing, you wouldn't think of what you would get. And then we're going to hit the D key again. And you entered that. And starting over, hashtag star 0, enter. Anyhow, so I think that's the best way to keep that, do the code and have our keypad checked. So I changed the name of that. It was get key, and this was more check the keypad, because this is accumulating your keystrokes as you're doing it here, and only returning it once it gets the D as an enter key, and then it's returning it, and that's where we're printing this out. Anyhow, that's my homework for this week. Thank you, Paul, for all you do. Appreciate your lessons and looking forward to your answer. For all those that are using blocking code, try to get out of doing that bad habit. Talk to you later. Bye.